Hello everyone and welcome to another video. A few weeks ago I beat Amity Airfield with just Ferris wheels and that turned out to be quite difficult. However, that was child's play compared to what I'm going to attempt in this video. Today I will try to beat Amity Airfield with just one ride. And it's not going to be like a big fancy coaster. No, it will be a tiny, terrible mini helicopters ride. The goal of Amity Airfield is to have 3000 guests and 600 park rating at the end of year 4. And we have to do that with one ride that has less than 1 excitement and less than 0.25 intensity. To do this we need to overcome several challenges. Firstly, one ride will never attract 3000 guests on its own, so we will need to advertise all the time. This will cost us a lot of money over time, which we can get back by setting the entrance price to 45 euros. This is much too high for just one ride and we will get complaints about it, but that doesn't matter as advertising ignores the entry price. The more difficult problem is actually keeping those guests in the park. We already had a lot of trouble with that with 240 Ferris wheels and they had much higher stats. How is one tiny terrible ride ever going to keep 3000 guests in the park? The answer is something that has been rotting our minds for several decades now. Television. More specifically, queue-line TVs. When there is a TV close enough to a guest in a queue line, they will never leave that line, no matter how long it takes. With the new save format we can now fit an unlimited number of guests in a queue line, so the goal is to fit all 3000 guests in one massive queue line. It will need to be very long and cost quite a bit of money, but we can get a lot of that money by removing all the path and scenery that we start out with. One tile of queue can hold about 5 guests, so it needs to be at least 600 tiles long. Just in case we'll be able to get a bit more guests than we need, I made the queue line a bit longer than that with 778 tiles. We also need to fill it with queue line TVs, which is again expensive, but we do have the money for it. So now guests won't leave the queue due to boredom, but there are still 2 more issues. The first one is actually getting the guests into the queue line. You may remember that the low intensity of exactly one of the Ferris wheels was a big problem when I did the Ferris wheel challenge. Many guests have a preference that is higher than that intensity rating, so they will not go on the ride. The mini helicopters is even worse, as this design only has 0.24 intensity. We can use entertainers to increase the happiness and as a result the intensity range of the guests by about 2.5 points, but that still leaves out all the guests with preference of above 3. It is the best that we can do though, so we need to hope that we can get enough guests with the right preference in the 4 years that we have. The second problem is that guests can still leave the queue line, namely through the ride itself. Therefore, we need to lower the throughput of the ride as much as possible. To do this, we will put only one helicopter on the track and set the minimum waiting time to 2 minutes. This means that once every 2 minutes, 2 guests will be able to complete the ride, which is about 60 per hour. Now all we need is a mechanic to fix the ride when it breaks down and that's it. The entire setup is done. After 1 month of work, or about 6 minutes in real time, all we have to do is wait and refresh the ads when they run out. There is literally nothing else we can do, so the waiting starts. At the start of year 2 we have about 800 guests, which is much less than what we had after 1 year in the Ferris wheel challenge. However, there the guest increase slowed down dramatically later on, which will probably not happen here. 800 is above the average of 750 that we need per year, so things are looking good. The park rating is also pretty high, so the requirement of having at least 600 likely isn't going to be an issue. A big part of the park rating is guest happiness, and both the entertainers and queue-line TVs help with that. The entertainers make the guests happy and the TVs prevent the guests from becoming unhappy while they're waiting. Halfway to the deadline at the start of year 3 we are approaching 1600 guests, which is again on schedule. I would show you more footage of the time in between, but there's just nothing interesting to see. I guess the only slightly exciting thing would be me buying new ads when the old ones are finished. It was exciting for me at least when I did the challenge, as I finally had something to do instead of just browsing Reddit on the side. Another year later we have close to 2400 guests, but I wasn't paying attention and saved a bit late when it was almost the end of March already, at which point we had almost 100 guests more. With one more year to go we roughly need another 600 guests, so it looks like we will get to the required 3000 in time. And we indeed do make it. In September year 4 we get to 3000 guests with a park rating of about 900. 1.5 months later we beat the scenario with 3160 guests in the park, of which about 3000 are stuck in the queue line. I imagine they're all having a hell of a great time watching whatever lame thing is on the TVs for the 1000th time. This is one of the challenges that you can easily do yourself. All you need to do is build the ride and the queue line, provide entertainers TVs and a mechanic, raise the entry price and run all ads at all times. It only took me about 40 minutes from start to finish, and it could have been faster still if I sped up more. Even if you're using the original RCT2 or RCT Classic where only 1000 guests fit in a queue line, you can still do it. Instead of one station, you simply build 4 stations and 4 queue lines, which is enough for 4000 guests. Because guests have now 4 queue lines to pick from, they are much more likely to enter one of them, which actually makes it a lot easier to do it this way. In this run, I already had more than 3000 guests at the start of year 3. This doesn't mean we're going to get to 6000 guests at the end of year 4 though, as the 4 queue lines can only hold 4000 guests, but it is much quicker. In OpenRCT2 with the unlimited queue line we could have also used a Ferris wheel. It has a bit higher throughput, but with the higher intensity rating more guests will ride it, so it's actually a bit easier. It's quite funny actually. A few weeks ago I struggled to beat Amity Airfield with 240 Ferris wheels, and now I can do it with just one and also no stalls. So what's next? Can we beat Amity Airfield with no rides and no stalls? I can't imagine a way to keep 3000 guests in the park without any rides. Sure, we can get them into the park with ads, but we can't keep them in the park without killing the park rating. If we put a no entry sign in front of the entrance trapping the guests, they will become lost, which kills the park rating faster than anything else in the game, even if they're happy. Dropping them onto the grass also makes them lost, so that won't help either. Unless there is some kind of glitch, I'm pretty confident that it is impossible to beat Amity Airfield without any rides or stalls. And that is where a user by the name of ZLux enters the chat. They have attempted to do exactly that, and if you want to see how that played out you can watch their video, which I've linked in the description. And that was probably it for the Amity Airfield challenges. We have now taken it to its logical extreme, and I don't think there's anything more to say about it. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.